I was originally an engineer, completely aside of this. I was originally an aerospace engineer, then became a naval architect at the end because the aerospace industry was pretty poor in the early 90s. And started in the offshore oil business. And then I worked for McDermott for a little while, and then I ended up going back to law school, became a patent lawyer, worked in Silicon Valley, of all places. Because I'd started my own .com back in 1995, which there weren't a lot of them back then. They weren't called .coms even back then. And got noticed and ended up in the law firm in Silicon Valley. Saw that the bubble was going to burst. Filed some of my own patents in the oil industry and went back to it. And then that company grew, and I sold it for $50 million in 2007 as part of a merger with a company called Dockwise. I ran Dockwise for almost 4 years. I was officially just the chief technology officer, but the CEO was never around. He just flew around and made visits to different people. And I did most of the sales and new business, and we went from $80 million EBITDA to 235 by the third year. And our gross sales went from 120 to about $530 million. And anyway, we had 1,600 employees, 80 accountants, an HSE department, and all those things. It wasn't very much fun. So I sold out in 2011 and started my own smaller company again, Valcor. And we were doing mostly offshore stuff. I was also going into alternative energy a little bit. And then I met Kobe, who was a similar person to me. He'd started a small company. It grew to over 1,000 people and $300 million a year, and he didn't enjoy it so much. And he was on the onshore oil and gas side. Kobe's extremely well known industry. He was sat on the board of the Gas Producers Association. He writes the test to get your license to be a professional engineer in oil and gas processing. He's one of the test writers. And he'd done that, and we started another company a few years back, and it grew again to over $100 million a year. And we made the decision last year as part of a reorganization to move on from, he had a kind of a bad partner that followed along with him, that we got rid of all of our engineers and moved them to another company and just made a deal with that company because we were back up to 200-300 people, and it wasn't fun. And we decided that our goal was, longer term sustained things rather than projects. So we started in, taking our own stake in production, investing in things like that, rather than, selling the equipment that somebody else makes money on for 20 years. It'd be better to actually be involved in the project for the whole time. And so since that time, we have Pearlands over here. We have production in the Ukraine, and we're still dealing with some in Tanzania, in Africa. But the primary project here is Pearlands because it has the most potential. Southern Trinidad has the most potential, and it doesn't have the problems of those other places. You have the arbitrary governments of Africa. You have the bullies of the Ukraine. Just don't seem to face any of that here. It's actually a relatively kind, gentle place that you file a permit and they actually actively follow up on it and try to get it done for you on time and early. Like I said, the corruption, whatever it is above our pay grade here. And the size of the opportunities are pretty big. The southern end here that we see is you have the shallow stuff like we're doing in Pearlands now, which is the cruise sands at 1,000 feet. At 3,000 feet, there's another layer called the cruise, which just inherited some wells from Heritage. Pearlands is the first new license under the new regime that actually has the right to drill deeper. So everybody else you see typically has a depth restricted license. So anyway, that's how we got here.